Hello and welcome to another weekly update. Now, sometimes these weekly updates are me going through things that have happened in the week that I think are interesting, and sometimes they include blog posts that I've done in the week. This one is different slightly in that I'm only going to talk about blog posts that I've put out this week. And that's because there have been 3 out this week that I want to spend some time talking about. So, in the order in which they were released, on Monday, I put out a blog post about the presentation translator. Now, I've blogged about this before, and if you haven't seen it, if you haven't played with it, you should definitely do that this weekend. Now, in the UK, there's a public holiday on Monday, so if you're in the UK, you have an extra day to play with stuff. So I would say definitely make some time for this. It's a PowerPoint add-in, and it will take your slides and your presentation, and it will, when you go to present, as you speak, it will transcript what you're saying, and it will put it into captions, like closed captioning, like subtitles, on the screen as well. So as you're talking, it will take your text and convert it. Even better than that, there's a website you can go to, a unique website for your presentation that gets generated, that people listening to you can go to and have that text translated into their own language. It's all done with translation services, the Microsoft Translation API, which is part of, I think, Cognitive Services. It's part of all this AI research stuff. You know, I keep saying Microsoft are investing loads of time and loads of effort into AI and research. Well, this is some real kind of fruits of that labor. It's really easy to use. It's really easy to consume. And I blogged about that a few weeks ago. Anyway, I wanted to do a kind of follow-up blog post with some tips and tricks, some of which I kind of came up with myself through using it, and also I sat down with someone from the presentation translation team at Microsoft, and we went through, and she had some really good tips as well, so I've kind of combined those together into a tips and tricks blog post. Now, you can go and look at that, and there's some interesting things in there. One thing that I thought was really cool that I didn't realize that you could even do this, but you can actually take all your slides and with one click translate the text of all the slides into another language. So if you're going to a show, for instance, if you're, let's say you're speaking at a event that isn't, and you're speaking in English, but English is not the natural language of where you're going to speak your event, you could distribute your slides in that other language as well as in English. And it does a really nice job of keeping the style the same, keeping the layout. It's not always perfect, because if you imagine some sentences, like the word structure and the sentence structure in languages is different between different languages. So it's not a perfect science, but it does seem to do a really good job of getting it all in the right place. So that you should definitely go and have a look at. There's a couple of other cool things it does as well that I kind of cover off in the blog post. But all in all, it's a really cool thing. And I'm going to come back to presentation translation and transcription stuff in a moment. But anyway, that was the first kind of blog post that came out at the beginning of the week. So yeah, call to action there is really go and play with Presentation Translator. Use it in your next event. Use it the next time you speak. You know, however you're using PowerPoint, use it the next time. I think you'll be amazed by it. And it's currently free to use, so make the most of that because it's in preview, and that probably won't last forever. All right, next piece of information is just a really kind of short one. So Yammer and Skype for Business integration. Now, this has been announced for a while. It's been talked about for quite a while. Various different people have talked about it. Most recently that I can think of is Tom Arbuthnot mentioned it as well on his blog. But I noticed just the other day that the status of this has moved from in development to rolling out. So it's tracking the status in the Office 365 roadmap, which is a kind of publicly accessible roadmap of the things that Microsoft are working on in Office 365. And they bundle those things up into different buckets. So things like in development, kind of coming soon, rolling out, I think launched is the other one. So you can kind of track this stuff as it goes through, and you can see what's coming down the line, and it helps because you can prepare for it. So this has just moved from in development to rolling out. So it feels like it's getting a step closer, and it sounds like, I don't know, there's no kind of surrounding detail around it, but it sounds like maybe rolling out means that it's going to start showing up in people's tenants soon. So that's exciting. I haven't seen it shown up. I haven't seen it kind of particularly change at all in the tenants that I'm part of, but maybe we'll see it start to change over time. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. Okay, all right. So I said before about the presentation translator, and I was kind of looking at the presentation translator and this PowerPoint add-in and thinking, this is really cool. Like, this is great technology, and it's a great use case, and it's great that Microsoft are making these translation services so easy to consume. And so I started thinking and thought, well, I'm a Skype for Business developer. Can I use the translation tools in Skype for Business, and what would that look like? So I thought about it, and I think what I thought would be useful would be that if you were in a conversation in Skype for Business and let's say the conversation was happening and it wasn't in your native language, it would be useful to have something like a bot take what you're saying and be able to transcribe it into English for you. And so I thought, I wonder if I could do that. I wonder if I could use the translation API that Microsoft have. I wonder if I could use Skype for Business, because I know how to put a bot into a conference. I know how to make a bot send IM. So could I take what's being said in the conference, translate it using the translation API, and then take that what's being said and translate it, or even just take the straightforward English that's being spoken, or the origin language, and put that in an IM in the conference. And that's what I've been trying to do the last couple of weeks. And long story short, I've done it. You can do it. It's possible. So there's a whole blog post about this, but essentially what I have running is you can be in a conference and you can drag in a bot, and when you do that, the bot will start listening to the conference. And anything that's spoken in the conference, it will translate into text. It will transcribe into text. So it will take the audio and turn it into text, and it will IM that text into the IM channel of the conversation. It will also translate it into German, because, hey, why not? It's a translation API. It's what it does. So you kind of got these kind of double features going in, so you can see how it works. Now, I've got a blog post about technically how it works, and all the code that I've put together to make this work is all in GitHub. It's all free as a sample. You can go and take it and you can use it, and I hope you do. It's interesting to look at some of the limitations and then some of the possibilities. So limitations, so it's on-premise only today, so you can't use this with Skype for Business Online. It's mostly down to the maturity of the APIs and technically what's possible, but at the moment this only really works with on-premise Skype for Business. And it's quite basic as a application. So I've done it as a proof of concept. I haven't done it as a fully kind of fledged product. You know, there's lots of rough edges, if you like. It proves out the concept, but it doesn't go much further than that. So possibilities here, I think, are huge. There's loads of things where this could be genuinely useful. So if we just leave aside the translation for a minute and just think about being able to take audio and turn it into text. So that's immediately useful for providing written transcripts of conversations. So if you need to keep a copy of a recording, or you need to send a transcript to a recording, or you need to make a transcript available of a recording for accessibility reasons, for searching afterwards, for making it easier to find what was said in a conversation or in a conference, you can do all that once you take the audio and turn it into text. It's much easier to do it than to search the audio. So that's one kind of possibility. The other is just purely imagine you're dropping in and out of calls. So let's say you're joining remotely and you have a very bad line or you have a poor PSTN line, and sometimes you can't hear the audio of the call. Just having the written transcript being sent to you as well can be good enough to help you get through some kind of pretty bad network. So IM has a good way, like the IM packets are much smaller for one thing, so they will get through a bad network much better than audio will. So even if you're only getting one word in 5 in the audio, that's fine, because if you're getting the transcript as well, you can probably work out what's being said between the two. So there's possibilities there that are kind of really interesting. And then adding the translation on top, well, that's kind of icing on the cake, right? That makes communicating between people of different languages easier, and that's only a good thing. And I think sometimes I underestimate how much of a challenge and how much effort that is, because I'm lucky in that English is my primary language, and that also happens to be the primary language of the internet and of technology. So actually, I don't have to go to any conferences and translate in my head in real time whilst also trying to think about the subject matter. I don't have to do that when I'm reading books. I don't have to do that when I'm looking through people's code and reading comments. So I'm very lucky, and other people have to do that in their head and still master the subject that they're looking at. And I think that's amazing. I have no idea how those people do that. If we can make that a little bit easier by translating for them in conversations and in conferences and just bridging that gap, I think that makes a huge difference. So I'm kind of excited by this. I'm excited about where this could go. I'm excited about the opportunities it opens up. And that's one of the reasons for putting all the code on GitHub and saying to people, do great things with this, do amazing things with this, make cool applications. You don't have to use my code, but look at my code to see how I've done it and then make it better. So I've got a code disclaimer in the blog post and against the code as well. So this is not perfect code. It does the job. It shows you what's possible, but I don't have loads and loads of time to do these kind of projects. So I invest the time in doing things that I've not done before rather than making perfect code. And I don't particularly apologize for that. So James Whitaker has a really good way of putting it. He said, and this applies exactly to me. So if you are less proud of the code you wrote than of the possibilities it creates. So I get behind that 100%, and is also a good excuse for some of the code you might see in my GitHub repo. So that's all I wanted to say this week. Exciting week, because I think this is a really cool sample. I'm excited to put it out there. I'm excited to see what people do with it. I think it's a cool use of the technology. I think it's genuinely useful. And yeah, so like I say, Monday's bank holiday in the UK. So for everyone in the UK, have a great long weekend. For everyone else, I'm sorry to rub it in. Have a good weekend, and I will speak to you again next week.